There is a silent architecture within each of us, a structure not built with brick or steel, but with beliefs, memories, traumas, dreams, and shadows. This architecture determines how we see the world, how we see ourselves, and ultimately how we live. If you wish to change your life, you must first become the architect of your inner world. To rewire your mind is not merely to think positively, it is to descend into the depths, confront the unknown, and return with new light. Today, I give you 5 keys, 5 deep transformations, to help rewire your mind and reclaim the wholeness that is already yours. There is a hidden realm within each of us, a secret domain we rarely dare to enter. It is not found in the outer world of roles, achievements, or appearances, but deep within, in the recesses of the psyche where the forgotten, the forbidden, and the feared reside. This is the place where we have cast the parts of ourselves we were told were too much, too dark, too strange, or too dangerous. We learned early, often without realizing it, that to be accepted, we must split ourselves in two, the self that is shown to the world, and the self that is buried beneath it. This buried self does not vanish simply because we ignore it. Instead, it becomes our shadow, a living part of us that moves through our lives unseen, influencing our thoughts, emotions, relationships, and choices in ways we do not understand. The shadow is not evil. It is simply that which is unconscious. It is made up of every feeling we disown, every trait we deny, every truth we fear, anger, vulnerability, selfishness, jealousy, lust, pride. If we were told these are unacceptable, we push them down. But what we resist does not die, it only waits. It waits for a crack in our facade, a moment of stress, or a relationship close enough to mirror it back to us. You see it when you overreact, when you lash out and regret it, when you find yourself stuck in the same argument, the same pattern, the same toxic loop. You see it in the people you cannot stand, for they are often living out the parts of yourself you've rejected. You see it when you strive for success not from joy, but from a fear of being nothing. You see it in the voice that criticizes you, in the wounds that never heal, in the emptiness that no amount of accomplishment can fill. To confront the shadow is to stop running from yourself. It is to pause and turn inward not with judgment but with curiosity and courage. It means asking hard questions. What am I unwilling to admit about myself? What do I judge in others that I secretly fear in myself? What have I labeled as bad that may actually hold power if I integrate it? This is not easy work. It is often painful, messy, and humbling. But it is also profoundly liberating, because in truth, the shadow is not a monster. It is a reservoir of potential. It holds your rejected vitality, your suppressed creativity, your repressed strength. When you bring light to what was hidden, it no longer controls you. Your triggers lose their charge, your relationships become more authentic, your identity becomes more whole. You begin to act not from fear or image, but from depth and integrity. You do not become perfect, you become real. This inner work is not a one-time revelation, but an ongoing relationship. The shadow evolves as you evolve. There will always be more to discover, more to heal, more to reclaim. But every time you meet yourself honestly, you gain power, not the kind of power that dominates, but the kind that integrates, a quiet, steady power rooted in truth. The great paradox is this: the parts of ourselves we are most afraid to face are often the very keys to our healing and growth. What you see as your weakness may be the birthplace of compassion. What you perceive as your darkness may be the crucible of wisdom. The shadow is not the end of the self. It is the beginning of the self made whole. So go inward, sit in the silence, welcome the discomfort, let the shadow speak, and when it does, do not turn away. Listen with the ears of one who knows that freedom is not found in the light alone, but in the sacred union of light and dark. For only when you have made peace with your shadow can you walk into the world as someone who is not divided, but complete. Within the vast terrain of the human mind, there exists a quiet center, a place untouched by chaos, undisturbed by fear, and unshaken by the winds of emotion. Most people never find it. They are swept along by thoughts they did not choose, beliefs they inherited, and emotions that rise and fall like tides without warning. They live as though their mind is a storm they must endure, rather than a landscape they can explore. But within each of us there is an inner witness, a silent observer, who sees all without judgment and who waits for us to remember it. This inner watcher is not a voice, not a feeling, not even a thought. It is presence itself. It is the awareness that notices your thoughts without becoming them. It sees the anger without becoming angry. It sees the sadness without drowning in it. It watches fear pass like clouds across the sky without running for shelter. It is the part of you that has been there since the beginning, quietly observing all that you have become without ever needing to intervene. To awaken this watcher is to realize that you are not the storm. You are the sky that holds it. Most people go through life reacting. A thought appears and they follow it. An emotion flares and they obey it. A fear whispers and they shrink. This is not conscious living, it is unconscious drifting. But when you begin to notice, to truly observe the contents of your mind without attaching to them, a great shift occurs. You begin to realize that you are not your thoughts. You are the one who hears them. You are not your fear. You are the one who sees fear rise. You are not even your pain. You are the one who witnesses it moving through your body like a storm across a field. This awareness is your greatest power. It is your anchor when the world shakes, your compass when the path is unclear. But to awaken it requires intention. It requires stillness. It requires the humility to realize that most of what you think, most of what you feel, and most of what you do is conditioned, not chosen. And until you see this clearly, you will be a puppet to your past, pulled by strings you cannot see. Begin by noticing when your mind is racing, noticing when you are caught in a loop of worry or judgment. Notice the voice that says, "I am not good enough," and instead of believing it, observe it. Where did it come from? Whose voice is it really? What fear is it feeding? This simple act of noticing is not passive, it is revolutionary. Because the moment you step back and observe your inner world, you are no longer controlled by it. You become the space in which transformation can occur. And from that space, everything changes. You no longer lash out because of anger. You inquire into it. You no longer numb your anxiety. You understand its root. You no longer chase validation. You watch the need arise and let it pass. This is not detachment, it is deeper intimacy. For the first time, you are truly present with yourself, not as the actor in the play, but as the one who sees the whole stage. There is a kind of wisdom that emerges here, a quiet, profound knowing that does not shout or argue. It simply sees what is, and from that seeing, a new kind of choice is born, a choice not based on fear or habit, but on truth. You begin to live from a place of clarity rather than confusion, from a place of response rather than reaction, from a place of grounded being rather than frantic doing. This is the inner watcher. It cannot be created, for it is already there. It cannot be forced, only remembered, and once remembered, it will guide you not with force, but with presence. Not with answers, but with space, and in that space the mind rewires itself, not by effort but by awareness. So return to the silence, not to escape the noise, but to hear what lies beneath it. Return to the stillness, not to run from life, but to meet it more fully. For in that stillness the watcher awakens, and when it does, you are no longer lost in thought. You are home every moment of your life. A conversation is unfolding, one that no one else can hear, but that shapes everything you feel, believe, and become. It is the dialogue within your own mind, the silent voice that narrates your experience, the one that speaks when you look in the mirror, when you make a mistake, when you dare to dream, or when you're lying awake at night wondering if you are enough. This voice is not neutral. It builds or it breaks, it guides or it confuses. It either roots you in truth or buries you in illusion. The tragedy is that most people have inherited this voice rather than chosen it. It echoes with the tones of early criticism, cultural pressure, wounded authority figures, or unresolved fears. Without realizing it, they walk through life accompanied by an inner saboteur, a voice that constantly undermines them, questions their worth, shames their desire, and shrinks their vision. It whispers things like you'll fail, you're not smart enough, they'll leave you, you're too much, or worse, you are not enough. These are not merely thoughts, they are spells, and if repeated long enough, they become a kind of internal prison that seems impossible to escape. But here is the truth. That voice is not your truth. It is a script, a program, a recording written by past pain and inherited fear, and like any program, it can be rewritten. To transform your life, you must begin by transforming your inner dialogue. Not by plastering over your pain with hollow affirmations, but by meeting the voice with awareness and intention. You must become the editor of your own narrative, the author of your own mind. It begins by listening, truly listening, to how you speak to yourself. Notice the tone, notice the words. Are they rooted in compassion or control? Do they come from love or from fear? If you spoke to someone you cared about the way you speak to yourself, would they feel seen and safe, or would they shrink away? This awareness is the first step. You cannot change what you do not hear. Then begin to respond. When the voice says you always fail, pause and ask, is that true, or is that a story I've carried from the past? When it says I'm broken, respond with I'm healing. When it says I'll never be enough, say I am learning to embrace all that I am. This is not about lying to yourself. It's about replacing judgment with curiosity, cruelty with kindness, fear with truth. Over time, this inner dialogue becomes your inner guide. It becomes the wise, steady voice that encourages without pressuring, that corrects without condemning, that uplifts without inflating. It helps you to be honest without being harsh, disciplined without being demeaning, humble without being self-effacing. It becomes the friend you always needed, the mentor you always sought, the parent you always longed for. And something miraculous begins to happen. Your mind becomes a place you want to inhabit. No longer a battlefield, but a sanctuary. No longer a source of torment, but a space of alignment. Your self-worth stabilizes. Your decisions become clearer. Your emotional life deepens. And what once felt like an endless loop of inner conflict becomes a river flowing toward peace. But this is not a one-time fix. It is a daily practice, a moment-by-moment commitment to choose better words, truer thoughts, kinder tones. There will be days you slip into old patterns, days when the old voice grows loud again. That's okay. The goal is not perfection. It is awareness. And with each conscious response, you create new pathways in the brain, new stories in the soul. You become, over time, someone who no longer speaks against themselves, but someone who speaks themselves into becoming. You begin to shape your life from the inside out, not by force, but by truth, spoken gently and consistently over time. Because the most powerful words you will ever hear are not the ones spoken by others. They are the ones you repeat to yourself when no one else is listening. Make those words your medicine, make them your compass. Make them your foundation, and watch as your entire life rises to meet the tone of your own voice. There is a deeper self beneath the surface of your ordinary identity, one that does not speak in facts or logic, but in symbols, stories, and dreams. It is not concerned with what you do, what you earn, or how others perceive you. It is concerned with meaning, with destiny, with soul. This deeper self is ancient. It remembers things your conscious mind has long forgotten. It is the part of you that sees life not as a series of tasks, but as a journey of becoming. To descend into the mythic self is to re-enter the sacred story of who you truly are. Modern life has starved us of myth. We are taught to think in terms of productivity, efficiency, and image. We are trained to fit into categories, to present polished answers, to live within the narrow lines of cultural approval. But the soul does not care about these things. The soul is wild, unpredictable, symbolic. It speaks in the language of dreams and archetypes, of longing and initiation. And until you descend into that realm, until you look beneath the mask you wear in daylight, you will never feel fully alive. You are not just a person. You are a character in a myth written before you were born. Every loss you suffer is not just an inconvenience. It is a symbolic death, an invitation to shed what no longer serves. Every desire that burns within you is not just a whim. It is a clue from the deep, pointing toward your hidden purpose. Every person you meet, every challenge you face, is part of the grand narrative unfolding through you. But you must be willing to see it that way. You must be willing to ask deeper questions. Not what am I doing today, but what story am I living? Not how can I fix this problem, but what does this moment mean in the greater arc of my becoming? To live mythically is not to escape reality. It is to perceive reality with sacred eyes. It is to understand that your heartbreak is not meaningless. It is an initiation, that your confusion is not weakness. It is the fog that precedes revelation. That your failures are not the end. They are the descent into the underworld where transformation begins. Every myth has a descent. The hero must leave the known world. The seeker must travel through darkness. The old self must die so that a deeper self may rise. This is not romantic. It is painful, disorienting, and often terrifying. But it is also necessary, because if you never descend, you will never rise. If you never let go of who you think you are, you will never become who you are meant to be. The mythic self does not arrive through striving. It emerges through surrender, through listening, through symbols that appear in dreams, in strange encounters, in the metaphors life keeps sending. You must begin to pay attention, not just to the outer events of your life, but to the inner ones, the patterns that repeat, the themes that haunt you, the questions that won't leave you alone. These are clues. These are guideposts. The mythic self is trying to speak, but you must become quiet enough to hear. And when you begin to live this way, when you align your outer actions with your inner symbols, you feel it immediately. A sense of resonance, of rightness, of truth vibrating beneath your choices. You feel less fragmented and more whole, less frantic and more grounded, because you are no longer living a borrowed life. You are no longer chasing other people's dreams. You are finally living the myth that is uniquely yours, and the beauty of this descent is that it changes everything. Even the mundane becomes meaningful. A conversation becomes a prophecy. A failure becomes a rite of passage. A coincidence becomes a synchronicity. Life becomes alive again, mysterious, layered, poetic. You begin to see yourself not as a mistake or a victim, but as a necessary thread in the great tapestry of existence. To descend into the mythic self is to remember what the world has made you forget, that your life is not random, that your pain is not wasted, that your journey is sacred, and that within you lives a deeper self, waiting not to be created, but to be remembered. Let go of the surface story, step into the underworld of your own soul, let the false names fall away, and there, in the silence beneath the noise, you will meet the one you were born to become. There is a self beneath the surface of the one you show to the world, a deeper, older self that does not answer to logic or societal roles. It is not the self that goes to work, pays bills, follows schedules, or smiles out of politeness. It is not the self you have constructed through years of habit, conditioning, and quiet compromise. This deeper self lives in the symbolic realm, in dreams, in visions, in longings you cannot explain, and in truths you cannot put into words. It is the mythic self, the part of you that remembers who you were before the world told you who to be. To descend into the mythic self is not a glamorous act. It is not a retreat into fantasy or a poetic escape from the pressures of life. No, it is an unraveling, a descent, as all true myths require. It is the call to go down into the places within yourself that you have ignored, denied, or feared. It means peeling back the layers of identity and image that were crafted for survival, and listening to the voice that has whispered beneath them all along. That voice speaks in symbols. It does not say, "I want a new job." It says, "You are dying in a place that no longer feeds your soul." It does not say, "You are afraid of intimacy." It says, "You have forgotten the language of your own heart." It does not say, "You are successful." It asks, "But are you true?" The mythic self does not emerge in comfort. It appears when you are broken open, when what once worked no longer works, when the world you built cannot hold the weight of your becoming. This is when the descent begins, not as a choice, but as a necessity. You feel it in the restlessness you cannot soothe, the emptiness that accomplishments cannot fill, the quiet ache that returns each time the distractions fade. You feel it when your dreams begin to unsettle you, when your reflection starts to look like a stranger, when your soul begins to revolt against the shallow patterns of daily life. You feel it, and something ancient in you stirs. To descend is to stop running from these signals and to follow them inward, even when you do not understand where they lead. It is to let go of control, to loosen your grip on the person you think you must be, and allow yourself to become what you already are beneath the noise. This descent often feels like death, the death of ambition, of identity, of certainty, and in a way it is, because the mythic self does not rise until the ego self has cracked. This cracking is not a failure, it is an opening. A gateway. In myth, the hero does not ascend the mountain until they first descend into the underworld. They must lose something precious, be stripped bare, walk through the darkness alone. They must face the dragon, not as a monster to slay, but as a symbol of their own suppressed power. They must speak with ghosts, with forgotten ancestors, with the parts of themselves they abandoned long ago. Only then do they emerge, not as the person they were, but as the one they were meant to become. This journey is not metaphor, it is your life. The anxiety you carry is not random. It is a sign that your soul wants more. The depression that slows you down may be the very weight that pulls you into deeper soil where new roots can grow. The heartbreak you suffer may be the initiation into a kind of love that cannot be touched by fear. These experiences are not detours from your path. They are the path. Your descent is your rite of passage. And when you live in dialogue with your mythic self, everything changes. You begin to see symbols in ordinary life. A conversation becomes a message. A coincidence becomes an omen. A dream becomes a map. You begin to make choices not out of fear or habit, but out of alignment with something vast, intelligent, and whole. You move differently. You speak from a deeper place. You look into people's eyes and feel the mystery staring back. You no longer seek permission to be who you are. You realize you've been carrying the invitation all along. This is not a life of escape. It is a life of return. Return to your soul. Return to your purpose. Return to the wild, untamable current that runs beneath every human story. You are not here to imitate. You are not here to perform. You are here to live a life so saturated with meaning that even your wounds shine with purpose. The mythic self does not make you more than human. It makes you fully human, but to claim it, you must descend. You must go inward, beneath the mask, beneath the titles, beneath the fears. You must let the old stories die. Let the ashes fall, and there, in the deep dark of your own becoming, you will find not an answer, but a fire that says, you were never lost, only waiting to remember. To rewire your mind is to reclaim your inner kingdom. It is not about controlling your thoughts, but becoming conscious of the forces that shape them. It is a path of inner alchemy, where the dark is not denied, but transmuted, where the unconscious becomes conscious, and where the self once scattered becomes one. Begin now, not by becoming someone else, but by remembering who you truly are.